webinar. Welcome to See the Future, looking ahead at the next 10 years of business education, presented by the Global Business School Network with Andrew Crisp of CarringtonCrisp. Please let me just take a moment to introduce you to GBSN. The Global Business School Network is a nonprofit organization. We're based in Washington, D.C., and we work around the globe to improve management education for the developing world. Our mission is based on a belief that there is a strong value in management for economic and social development. And we have a network of, now this is an outdated map, 60 top business schools in 27 countries around the globe that work with us. We help facilitate networking and cross-border knowledge sharing and do capacity building programs that help business schools and other institutions teaching management and entrepreneurship build their capacity. Some of the activities that we have for our network members include an annual conference, webinars like this one. We will help collaborate to put together panel discussions and online communities and working groups. And we can also facilitate cross-border peer mentoring. With that, I would like to introduce you today to Andrew Crisp from CarringtonCrisp, a longtime collaborator of the Global Business School Network. He has just released a fascinating study called See the Future on what business education is going to look like in the next decade. And I would like to introduce him and ask him to tell you a little bit about what he's been doing and the wonderful and interesting results that he has found. Andrew, do we have you?
Yes, I'm here, Paige. Thank you.
Great.
Just 1 second. I'm just getting the screen up. Lovely. Thank you all very much for joining us today. Delighted to have this opportunity to conduct this webinar. What I'm going to do is take you through some of the key findings from our study, See the Future. Just to give you a little bit of background, first of all, this data was collected in May of this year. We had about just under 5,500 respondents take part in an online survey. Those respondents were made up from a mixture of prospective students, current students, alumni, and employers, and were drawn from around about 137 countries across the world. So a very international, diverse section of respondents, but good numbers across each of the groups. So some good data that I'll be sharing with you this afternoon. The study itself was really based around work that we've done over the last 10 years with business schools. And we were at a stage where we'd identified what we believed were some of the key issues that were in many business schools' minds at the moment. And asked questions about those to the respondents. There were 5 issues in particular. First of all, we looked at the role of business in society. We then looked at the value of a business education. Third issue were sustainability, corporate social responsibility, and ethics. Our 4th issue was internationalism. And almost inevitably, the 5th issue that we considered was technology. What I want to do is begin by sharing a small YouTube video, which I think rather neatly sets up some of the issues that we're going to be dealing with today. Now, there may be a slight delay whilst we make the technology work, and the sound quality may not be perfect, but I hope you'll get most of the message from this. So here we go.
I have failed you. I have failed to help you share your talent with the world when the world needs talent more than ever, yet it's being wasted every day by an educational system steeped in tradition and old ideas. It was time for a new tradition. It's time to realize Talent isn't just in schools like this one, it's everywhere. It's time to use technology to rewrite the rules of education. To learn how you learn so we can teach you better. It's time university adapted to you rather than you adapting to it. It's time for a different kind of university. It's your time.
So that's a video, a TV commercial that Kaplan have put together. And of course, they're making a particular point about their offer, but I think it rather neatly sums up some of the changes that are happening currently in business education, in university higher education. What I'd like to do is now get into the substance of the report. I think what I just said is that change is taking place, and that's a message that we get very clearly both from prospective students, from current students, from alumni. And although there is change, there are also quite a few constants, and I'll explain about those in this section. But I thought we might begin with a short poll just to get a sense of whether you as organizations have already got into this mood of change and what you're doing about it. Now, I wonder whether we're going to get some interesting results on this survey. What results have we got?
All right, we have 70% of our participants have voted yet. I'm going to give you 5 more seconds and then I'm going to close the poll.
Okay. Right, we must be about time up there. What have we got on this first poll?
All right, Andrew, I don't know if you can see the results here, but it looks like 67% said yes.
Okay, well, that's encouraging to hear that people are already making changes rather than being behind the curve. Let me go on and talk a little bit about some of the changes that our respondents in the survey were interested in. So what we have here are some of the initial findings. Large numbers, 81%, 90%, saying that business needs to be about more than just maximizing shareholder value. Similar sorts of numbers that business models need to change to better engage with society. And again, similar numbers saying that business leaders should behave ethically at all times. Although interestingly, on that last point, 8% actually disagreed with this. And the numbers were slightly higher amongst prospective and current undergraduate students. Now, given everything that's gone on in the world, in the banking sector in particular in recent years, it was a little bit of a surprise to find that ethical behavior was not a priority right across the board. Building on this picture of how people perceive business at the moment, we found quite a large number saying that they felt business was poorly portrayed in the media. And although that declined amongst employers, there was still a significant number at about just over a third there who had this point of view. And it was particularly prominent in the Eurozone, where we found economies in the Eurozone had obviously had a very difficult time over the last few years. And that perception of business and what business was all about had been damaged by the reporting in the media. That's important in terms of what degrees young people might choose to undertake, whether business will be perceived in quite such a positive way as it has been in the past. And if I show you on the chart here, we're looking at strongly disagree on the left over the strongly agree on the right, whether they felt business was portrayed poorly in the media. You can see right across the piece that there's about 40%, maybe slightly more in some cases, who are saying that business is poorly portrayed. And only amongst the managers and directors in the third sector at the very top there, is there a balance who say, actually, no, that's not the case. It's perhaps slightly the other way, but only very slightly the other way. So this isn't just a student perception, it's a business perception as well. Just building on that and this question of what people choose to study, we found that between 1 in 5 and 1 in 3 prospective and current students said that they believed business education was less highly valued than other degree subjects. Certainly in the UK marketplace, I think about 1 in 7 undergraduates study business. The moment that starts not to be the case because people think that a business degree isn't well regarded external to the university or the business school, it's an important change, both in terms of funding, but also in terms of the numbers and the attitudes and the views of the students coming in. And that's something that schools need to be aware of. Looking a little bit more at some of the data as a graph here, we talked about the specific role of business schools, and this is looking at the alumni view and the employer view. And what you'll see is there are some not surprising issues. So towards the bottom, developing business leaders with strong ethical behaviors. Slightly higher up, as I said, some things never change, a focus on delivering high quality teaching and learning. And also developing graduates ready for the world of work. But as we go up the chart a little bit further, developing graduates are able to think creatively. And this is a change that we've seen, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, where historically people have asked for general management, they've asked for leadership, they've asked for finance, they've asked for HR. In the last 2 years, creativity, innovation, and change have come much more to the fore. And there's one other here that's worth making a note of. About 5 down from the top, offer programs that go beyond business, helping students see a bigger picture. A couple of years ago, we worked with a business school in Canada who said, if you're going to study business with us, you also have to study something else, maybe politics, maybe economics, maybe sociology, maybe history. But if you want to understand business, you have to go beyond business to look at other subjects. And within a large university, being able to offer these sort of cross-disciplinary programs, which are perhaps business at the core, but have other elements as well, does seem to be both something that's in demand from students and something that's in demand from employers, and is an important trend looking to the future. Looking at the current students and the prospective students, again, something that perhaps hasn't changed, education in business should be practical rather than theoretical. The applied nature of business becomes very important. And also looking at postgraduate and undergraduate alumni, the value of a business education was providing me with the skills I needed for my next job and developing problem-solving skills. So here, in some senses, that the same is true as it's always been. But at the same time, something is changing, the employment aspect of things. This is from a separate study done by an organization in Sweden called Universum. Every year they do a study of employer brand, and this is a group of MBAs. They asked who they would want to go and work for. Now, it's interesting of itself, the list, organizations such as the World Bank in there. What is particularly interesting is if you contrasted this with what was recorded 5 years prior to this in 2006. At that stage, in the top 10, there were 3 investment banks. There were 2 accountancy firms. Apple were lower down on the list. The World Bank weren't in the list at all. And there is a change in terms of the sorts of organizations that graduates from business schools are considering for their careers. And this chart, I think, makes that very clear in terms of the sort of employers that are listed. The other change that is taking place is more students are saying, I want to run my own business. Now, you may be thinking with this chart up here, I've put up the wrong image. It's my holiday plans for next year. That's not the case. This is taken from the Leeds University Business School website in the UK. Not entirely taken from their website, but a link from their website. They have a page of MBA alumni who started their own businesses. And this is an English student, an English graduate who started a Japanese ski holiday business. And the point it makes for prospective students is not only that Leeds is a place where you can come and get entrepreneurial skills, but Leeds is a place where if you study an MBA, you can then go on and do anything anywhere. And that's a very powerful recruiting message to potential students who are considering setting up their own business or working in an entrepreneurial environment. We also find a change in terms of what students value about a business education. Here you'll see that 64% of prospective and current students said they get they most value a business education to help them get a more fulfilling job than other degrees, whereas only 60% say they do it to get a more highly paid job than they would get from another degree. And again, this is a change that we've seen in the last 2-3 years, really following the collapse of Lehman Brothers and the economic difficulties that many economies have found themselves in. Where we started talking to MBA students about 5 years ago and asking them what motivated them, at that time, it was very much about getting a highly paid job. 2-3 years ago, income remains important, but now it's about getting a job. And that means having a variety of skills that will perhaps lead them to a more fulfilling job rather than a more highly paid job. Sometimes it's about getting a job and then moving up the salary scale, but more often than not, it's about something that I'm actually going to enjoy as well as I'm going to get income from. And if you look at the same question when we ask corporates about the value of a business education, then perhaps no surprise at the top here, the next generation of business leaders are important to them. But we've got this understanding the wider context of business again. We've still got learning backed by academic rigor, and we've got this creativity message in terms of delivering innovation in business. So some important messages changing, some things staying the same. If we move to the next section of the report, sustainability, corporate social responsibility, and ethics are now mainstream both with students and employers. We first asked questions in another survey about these subjects 2 or 3 years ago, and whilst the issues were on the agenda, they were very much not in the mainstream. The survey that we've just completed, the See the Future survey, changes that entirely. I think we have another little survey now, so I'll ask you all to pick up and do some voting. Now, the question itself is an interesting one, and I'll explain why it's relevant when we come to a later slide, but I wanted to get the question in front of you now, so it'll be interesting to see what people have to say. I wonder if we have some answers yet.
We do. About half of our audience has voted. I'll give you another 5 or 6 seconds to get your answers in. It looks like they're coming in.
All right. Lovely.
There we go.
Certainly, yeah. What numbers have we got this time?
Here we go. No, 58%.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Well, I'll explain the relevance of it in a moment, but I think if you simply look at the Financial Times at the moment, they have their MBA challenge going on and some very interesting projects for students working with third sector organizations, social enterprises, charities right around the world. But I'll say a little more about this in a second. If we carry on to the next slide. I think the first point is quite a large number of students and employers saying there aren't enough opportunities to learn about these subjects at business schools. That the agenda, in a way, the business schools are trying to catch up with the students and the employers. We also see all audiences saying, employers and students, that understanding these issues is key to success in business. So if they're not being taught or provided for in business schools, then something's missing out and students are graduating without skills that they feel are important. We also found that just under half said that schools that don't teach sustainability, CSR, and ethics should be ranked lower than those that do, rising to almost 2/3 amongst employers in the third sector. Now, this is particularly interesting because there's really only one strong ranking that has considered these issues, which is the Beyond Grey Pinstripes ranking, which, of course, many will be aware was closed recently. The Aspen Institute, who organized the survey, discovered that they couldn't really get consistent data from business schools to produce a credible ranking. Yet the students are saying this is an important issue. And given the importance and stress they place on rankings when considering where to go and study, it does seem that there is an opportunity to try and find a way to measure some of these issues in some of the international rankings. One aspect of this is whether programs actually include the subjects of sustainability, CSR, and ethics, and the importance put upon them. 41% of all students disagreed that they were less important than traditional subjects such as accounting, finance, marketing, leadership, rising again to about 2/3 of employers in the third sector. And if I show you those numbers across the different groups here, so those who agreed that sustainability, ethics, and CSR were less important, quite a high number amongst prospective undergraduates, but dropping back to around the 30% or lower level amongst all the other audiences. One or two audiences very high, disagreeing that they were less important. Prospective postgraduates almost up to 60%, public sector employers almost over the 60% mark. And the point about business schools running projects, a point about the question we asked a few moments ago, 60% of all audiences say business schools should run projects to give back to local, national, or international organization communities, and rising to almost 3/4 among prospective postgraduates. And there are some very good examples out there, from the very simple working with a local school, a local primary school on reading projects, to working with international charities, to working with social enterprises in emerging economies, all sorts of interesting opportunities. And even if it's not possible to rank an organizer, a business school, on the basis of what it does in this area, what it might be able to do is to say, these schools are running projects. These are the types of projects they're running. These are the outcomes from these projects. This is how students get involved with these projects. And in that way, provide a clue as to how a business school is dealing with these issues. The next area I wanted to talk about was internationalism. And I think the important point here is it's got to be more than just a label. It's got to deliver something practical in terms of what the students get out of it. If I go back and look at our work over the sort of early part of the last 10 years, then almost every school was beginning to say they were international, they were multicultural, they were global, whatever word they used, it was there. And they were trying to use it to differentiate themselves to a certain extent from other schools. What we find today is that every school says they're international, every school says they're global, and it doesn't differentiate anymore. So we were interested to try and understand what internationalism should mean in terms of the student and the employer experience. And we have another little survey, so I'll pass over again for you to have a polling on this, and then I'll pick up on some of these issues as we go through the next set of slides in the webinar this afternoon. Now, some of these issues, there's a few things to pick up on, and hopefully it'll take you just a moment to come up with them. How are we doing?
We have about 30% of people voting. I think it just takes a minute for them to read through. It looks like there are some kind of interesting things to think about, whether different schools are partaking of these different activities.
Or undertaking, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll just give them a few moments more, because there is a list there.
All right, we'll do 5 more seconds.
Okay, let's see what we get. And if you want to feedback each of those individually, that would be quite interesting.
Let's do it. So it looks like mixing international and domestic students, 77% do that. 80% use case studies from emerging markets. Only 20% offer language. 63% provide opportunities for international student placements. And even 50% help students with international career services.
Okay, let me share some of the results and talk about those as we go through. First of all, where do people want to study? The top choice is the USA. It has been for years, it remains so. More than 50% of all current and prospective students would like to study in America. Following that, UK, Australia, Singapore, Japan, Germany, Canada, and China. And what is most interesting in that list, again, you've got the UK and Australia have always been popular, but Singapore and China are typically 4th and 6th in terms of people's lists of places that they want to go and study, and very much the coming countries in terms of opportunities to study internationally. Why do they choose those countries? Well, inevitably, they've heard about the universities and business schools in those countries. They have a good reputation. Maybe the country itself has a good reputation. Quite a large number want to live and work in a particular country after their studies. And that, of course, is why the career service issue comes to the fore. I'll come back to that in a moment. But interestingly, about a third say they were attracted by the sporting and cultural profile of a particular country. And this was quite a surprise for us. But if you think a little more widely about it, and this is a very UK example, I'm afraid, but I think it works in other places as well. The Premier League Football League in the UK has a global coverage every weekend of hundreds of millions of people watching the games on television. If you are a business school in a city which has a football team, but it's not a particularly well-known part of the UK, perhaps it's perhaps a more marginal part, not London, certainly not Manchester, then it's fantastic news for you, because it means that your city, and therefore the name that your business school shares, is being seen by hundreds of millions of people every weekend. And while that is not a reason to go and study there, it's a great start in terms of awareness. And then when you go out into the market and promote the business school, knowledge of the location isn't starting from zero. There's already a group of people who know where you're talking about, which is a great advantage. I'll tell one little story, a personal story. I was in Shanghai, where we'd been doing some work for one of the business schools. And one evening I'd strolled down to the Bund and walked along by the river and got into conversation with two young Chinese men. And we were talking about international brands, and I asked them which ones that they knew about. The first one they mentioned was Nokia. Well, that was a little bit of a surprise, but they explained that in China, Apple is expensive and Nokia is cheap. So that made sense. The second and third international brands that they mentioned were Manchester United and David Beckham. And in a way, that illustrates the point about awareness, perhaps more than anything else. We go on to the next slide rather. 40% of postgraduate students say they want to learn about approaches to business in different countries and will expect to see international case studies as part of their learning. One of the complaints we get from students in other research quite often is that a lot of the case studies they have put in front of them are the case studies about IBM, about General Motors, about the big multinationals in Western economies. And what they're not getting are the stories about Lenovo and Tata and the large growing companies in emerging economies. And also they're not getting the case studies of the social enterprises, of the charities and NGOs who are working in many different countries across the world. And I know that Hong Kong UST are in the process of setting up with the Association of Asia Pacific Business Schools, a case clearinghouse of Asian case studies at Hong Kong UST. And I think more of that and more of that variety and more up-to-date case studies will become very important in many business schools going forward. We talked about international placements. As you can see here, 3/4 of current students would like an international placement as part of their degree. It is perhaps making their learning real and putting it in a context that they think is going to be important going forward. And it was interesting to see, I think 63% in the poll a moment ago said that they make this available. Despite all this, 1/4 of undergraduate alumni and a few more than postgraduate alumni say that they feel their degree is less than poorly prepared for working in an international business environment. And part of that, I suspect, you've got employers here saying that there's too much focus, 1 in 5 saying there's too much focus, but at the same time, 90% almost saying that a good business education must develop understanding of business in different parts of the world. And an important part of that we found in the survey was about 30% of employers felt that students should learn another language as part of their business education. I think it was 20% in the poll. So maybe there's something there in terms of more schools offering this, particularly when they're in a university setting and there are language tutors, providers, degrees within the wider university. There are opportunities for connections there, and to use technology to deliver some of that language learning. And that brings me on to the final section of the study. It's a technology stupid. It's taking off a line from a US election a few years ago where it was the economy stupid. But the point is, one way or another, technology will be a key component of learning, changing the education landscape. A lot of the conversation at the moment, of course, is about the MOOCs. That's not necessarily what we're talking about here, although I will say a little bit about the MOOCs in just a moment. we have our fourth poll now. We'll ask about the MOOCs and how people are reacting to them, because of course it is a significant issue. And I'll give you a few moments just to look at the options here and come up with some answers. Now, I wonder how the response is coming on this one.
They're coming in quickly. I think this is a powerful,
a very
powerful subject here. We'll
very
just give you another 4 seconds. How about that? To get your opinions in, and we'll close the poll.
Okay, so let's see what role we think MOOCs will have in business education.
All right. Well, it looks like only 3% think they will make very little difference. 55% think MOOCs will be just one model of online education, but 35% think that they will be integral to most business degrees.
Okay, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about what we found in technology then. I like to begin with this quote from Clay Christensen because I think it probably does sum up a lot of what is going on in terms of the approach, and it does mimic very much some of the findings that we found in the survey. This idea that a hybrid model will evolve rather than one way or the other, rather than it being online or on campus. There will be elements of both of them available in many of the degree offerings. This is an interesting place, perhaps, to take us further forward. This is actually a picture of my 8-year-old daughter. And I like the comment from Sheryl Sandberg at Facebook about what young people can teach us in the place of technology. Now, my daughter's only 8, she's not a teenager yet, but what is quite interesting is she's already teaching me how to use technology. I didn't know how to pause live TV. She showed me how to do that. She uses an iPad on a regular basis. And really, this is a case very much of the students and the employers, of some sense, leading the business schools rather than the business schools leading with the technology. I'm going to show another short YouTube video now. It only lasts for just over a minute. And I suppose what is interesting about it is it's not teenagers, it's not 8-year-olds. This is actually a small baby who I think illustrates the point about the way younger people are leading on technology. So just bear with me while I get the technology working again. Oh, hang on. Well, I hope you all managed to pick up most of that. I think it's very interesting. I showed this again at a seminar on Tuesday, and people said it's rather scary how young people are leading in terms of their use of technology. But actually, I think the opposite is true. This is something that is not different for them. For myself, for many of us, I suspect, listening, technology is a change. It wasn't there when we were young. For young people, it's about this is the way to do things, and so for them not to use technology in education would be unusual. We do another study that looks at how students use business school websites. And what we're finding this year and last year is you now have a generation who are coming in as undergraduates who 10 years ago were the early adopters of social networks like Bebo and MySpace. And over the last 10 years have moved from there and have set up a Facebook account, and maybe now even a LinkedIn account or some other social network around the world. And for them, these tools are part of their lives and part of every part of their lives. And so again, one of the things that we found in the Generation Web survey is that 2 years ago, only 17% said they used social networks as part of their studies. The last 2 years, it's been 39% and 40%. And so using, be it Facebook or some other social network, to learn or to help learn is just normal. It's not exceptional, but it is a change, and it's a change that schools certainly need to catch up with in many cases. I showed this page, and I think it's quite an interesting one. The statistic from the See the Future survey is there at the top. 60% of all current students agree that for academics, technology often means little more than using a PowerPoint presentation. The reason for showing this page is it's from the iTunes U website. It's the Open Universities page on there. And at the end of February this year, Apple released some data on the usage of iTunes U. They'd reached 1 billion downloads. And the Open University and Stanford University in the US were the top or the most downloaded sites on iTunes U, with 60 million downloads each from their pages on iTunes U. And it's not just people who are doing their programs, it's people choosing to listen to something, learn something in their spare time as and when they want to. And these are real examples of people taking technology and applying it in the learning space. So well ahead of MOOCs, of course, the MOOCs are part of this conversation as well, but this is technology and education working today. We also found that in the employer's side, more than 80% of managers and directors said they expect their organization to use technology to deliver more workplace learning in the future. It's really something that I'll talk about a little bit more in just a moment, but it's a change in the way people learn, and I think that's very significant as well. This is an advert from for a New Zealand lager, and it was outside a university in New Zealand. And it's slightly ironic, of course, because the point is that a lot of people will have their smartphones, they'll go to the pub or the bar, and they'll be able to chat online and enjoy the bar as well. And it does make the point here that about a third of prospective undergraduates and postgraduates would consider studying for a business degree online, or for some of a business degree online. About a quarter of prospective undergraduates and prospective postgraduates would study online rather than on campus if it was cheaper to do so. So there's an issue of finance here as well as technology that's important. But between 44 and 53% of employers would not recruit a graduate who had only studied online, and 30% or more would not recruit a graduate who had included a business program from a MOOC as part of their degree. And half of managers are uncertain of what a MOOC offers and how it can be part of a business degree. So as well as selling the idea of online learning to potential students, the MOOCs need to sell their product to employers as well. And we believe it's only when employers buy into this concept and start recruiting those who are studying MOOCs or have studied MOOCs as part of a wider degree, will the MOOCs themselves really take off in a substantial way. Coming back to this point about learning perhaps part online, 3/4 of all prospective students say they'd prefer to learn in an environment where I could fit study around my lifestyle and or combine with work. 70% of alumni want to keep up to date through podcasts, video, other technology. 70% of current students, again, would continue learning if they could fit it around their lifestyle and combine with work. And increasingly, we see a situation where lifelong learning, which has been around for many, many years, is being put to one side, and instead people are saying, I want lifestyle learning. Lifelong learning felt a little bit like a prison sentence, something I have to keep on doing, it's always going to be there. Lifestyle learning is about learning around your other commitments in a flexible way, using the technology and using the learning then to deliver the lifestyle that the student or the graduate wants in the future. And there are many examples of these sorts of things happening. Recently in Australia, I came across an organization who have developed a little app that can be used on a smartphone that provides 15 minutes of learning and then a small test at the end to check the understanding of that learning. And these sorts of changes to the way people use different tools to learn is certainly something that we think will be more prevalent in the future of business education. 3/4 of current students would like downloadable podcasts of all their lectures. It's not just the ones who don't get out of bed at 9 o'clock in the morning, but it's people who want the information there to help them revise, to help them catch up when it comes to exams, to help them reflect on the information that perhaps they've been sitting in a lecture with hundreds of other people listening to. More than 80% of alumni think that social networks are a valuable way to keep in touch with other alumni. And certainly we found that the alumni pages on school websites are being used less and less, because quite often an alumni will get up in the morning, turn on their smartphone or their tablet, they'll log into LinkedIn, and all of their friends will be there, all of the people they worked at university with, all of the people they work with now in employment are there, and there is so much more going on than there is in some of the web pages of business schools for alumni. So social networks are playing a much greater role in that part of education as well. And I thought I might just conclude with this final YouTube video. It's for a book by a lady called Youngmi Moon, who's a professor of marketing at Harvard. And it's just a little trailer. It's a 3-minute trailer about the book, but it makes a very interesting point about how things are changing and how change is going to be coming more and more, not specifically in business education, but many of the points made in the little trailer I think could be equally applied to business education. So just bear with me again for one moment. Okay, that's different, as I say, by Young Mi Moon, and I think makes some useful points about some of the issues that we've been looking at this afternoon. And that concludes my presentation. I'm very happy to take questions, and you can find obviously further information both on Twitter, hashtag See the Future, and on our website.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. I just want to
So if I
mention
can
to
hand back to you,
everyone.
Paige.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I will grab the screen back from you in a second. I want to give people a chance to write down all of your information. And I just want to let everyone know that we will be making this PowerPoint presentation, the PDF of it, available to you so that you can look at all of this again. And there will be a recording of this webinar so that you can review it or share it with your colleagues. We have had a few questions come in during the presentation, so I'll just start going through them. And if you have any others, please feel free to submit them. Matt Greiger says that you mentioned the survey includes students, prospective students, alumni, and employers. Why didn't you include B School faculty and staff?
No particular reason. We'd be very happy to do that at some point, but we were, I suppose, trying to look at, for want of a better word, the customers of the schools on this occasion. But certainly we've undertaken other surveys that does include faculty and staff, and it would be interesting to know what their perspective is on all of these issues.
Right. Great. Um, and George Stein has joined us and said, he believes it's great to think about how younger people are dealing with technology, but it will take almost 10 years for an 8-year-old girl to go to college. I wonder what we should do now to impact the business school entrance for the next couple of years. I didn't know if you
Yes,
had a
that's
response to
yeah.
that.
No, I think it's absolutely true. Of course, they're 10 years off, and the technology will have moved on again in those 10 years. The point I think I made about how students are using social networks far more, not just to hold conversations with potential students and with alumni and to make those connections, but also as part of a tool for helping them to learn, to help them build networks globally, to help them understand how people are looking at business in other parts of the world. And I think making use of those social networks and building tools and spaces on them where students can collaborate internationally would be a very useful thing to do in the next couple of years. Certainly, I'm aware of some schools which have programs which recruit internationally. And once students are accepted onto those programs, well before they actually come onto campus, they have private Facebook areas where the students start talking to each other. And having tools like that, I think, are useful, but maybe those tools should be more widely available, not just for the students on particular programs.
Right. We have another question that's come in from Dale Matheny, who asks, what would you say to my department chair who doesn't think social entrepreneurship courses important?
um, well, I'd show the data first of all. I'd say that 5,500 people can't be wrong. That seems a pretty good starting point. I think also it's finding the real world examples, finding the social enterprises that are making a difference, having an impact in a lot of people's lives on a regular basis, and also showing where the demand is coming from students for placements, internships, careers in these types of organizations. I don't say it's the customer who will drive the change in many occasions. And the students who are looking for careers, who want help starting social enterprises, who have got involved in them and have made big successes of them, are the best ones probably to convince your department chair.
And to follow up on that, we had another comment come in from Michelana Jester, who was responding to the discussion about the institutions requiring students to do some sort of giving back work. And she
Mm-hmm.
mentioned that perhaps another way is to ask what percentage of students do that type of work for charities without being required by the institution, and looking at demand in that way, because I'm guessing she's seeing that happening in her students.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. Yes, do large numbers of students do this off their own back? I think a growing number do. Maybe not as many as if it's put in front of them and they're told it's part of the program and encouraged to do it that way. Hopefully, one of the consequences of making it an obligatory part of the program is the students who wouldn't otherwise have done such things see the benefits of doing it and take it forward further into their lives and get involved in other organizations outside of the business school. But when they start working, or perhaps they go to the firm that they go and work for and say, we should be doing something as well. So that there's a benefit that way. But yes, it would be interesting to know how many are doing it off their own backs in the first place.
Yeah. And we have another question from Maris asking, were there any data on a need for exchange programs between countries?
Not specifically. More the data is there asking people where they would like to go and study, and it's asking them whether they want to go to another country. So not there wasn't a specific question about exchange programs, if you like, more whether they would go and study over abroad or whether they would want an internship or placement over abroad as part of their studies.
Great. Maybe that's another follow-up question for you.
Yeah, indeed.
And I apologize if I say this name wrong, but I have Eilif Tronsen, who is asking if perspective on online learning varies significantly across regions or countries of the world.
It's an interesting point, and what we've done with the data, we found that there were enough respondents from, I think, 8 different countries to break it down specifically to those countries, but also we've broken the data down for other respondent countries into groups of countries. So we've looked at, let me see, India, China, Germany, UK, Australia, New Zealand, France, and one other I can't remember off the top of my head. And we don't find that much difference, to be honest. Yes, it sometimes changes because of access to the technology. Sometimes it changes because the provision on campus is stronger than it is in other places. We do find, certainly in some parts of Africa, there is more usage of mobile technology in terms of online learning. But generally, you've got a group of 18-year-olds globally nowadays, certainly at the undergraduate level, who are all very technically savvy, for want of a better word, and are keen to embrace different solutions in terms of technology and learning.
And that's very interesting to see that it is quite universal. We have another question about CSR and actually the management and administration of universities. Eva Caban Garcia says, in addition to teaching CSR, don't you think colleges should also practice university social responsibility? I'm wondering if you did any research on that.
No, absolutely. And obviously I didn't show all the data today, but one of the responses, and I can't remember the exact number, but it was a very high number, certainly said that business schools should be leaders in sustainability and CSR. And there are all sorts of ways that that can be shown, whether it's putting things into programs, whether it's their use of resources, whether it's working with third sector organizations to support them. There are all sorts of things that they could be, whether it's transparency in their administration, all of these sorts of things, governance of their organizations are important. And the message coming through from the data is very clear. It says large numbers think that that's exactly where business schools should be, leading out front themselves.
Right. So we have a whole bunch going in here. I'm going to get as many as I can in our hour.
Okay.
Rob Edwards said he's very interested in your reference to case studies about emerging markets. Do you see case study content and other bite-sized transformed content as increasingly important to business school students of the future?
Yes, I think I do. And its variety is an important aspect of it. I said, not just the case studies of the large organizations in emerging markets, but of the SMEs, of the third sector, from different perspectives, and provided, I suspect, in different ways as well, not just a sort of traditional case study written down by an academic, but provided online as short videos, perhaps on iTunes U, all sorts of different ways of delivering that. And the mix will get greater the more business schools and business students there are globally. The demand will be there, and more people will be writing up their experiences.
Right. So I'm going to go with one more question. We do have a couple others that are very intriguing, and I will share them with Andrew, and we will follow up with you online. But I thought this one was very appropriate, considering you are in essence a marketer, and we do talk a lot about the developing world schools here at GBSN. Catalina Rodriguez asks, in a developing country, what do you think should the strategy to follow in order to differentiate from other schools?
Well, the first thing is, don't be the same as all the schools that exist already. It would be very easy to say, pick a country like the UK. There are 130 business schools. Many of them are successful. We'll be like one of them. I think that's a big mistake. To repeat, dare I say, all of the mistakes and all of the history that they've been through to get to where you are now would be a great waste of time and resources. Much better to look at the businesses that you're working with, or the businesses that are in your locality and region, and ask what are the issues that they need to deal with, and make sure that there are programs available to help them and the students who they'll be employing as graduates. And also, you said it was a good place to end, to look at the technology. I mentioned a moment ago about the use of mobile technology in Africa. Somebody told me today there's not enough copper to put down copper lines throughout the whole of Africa, and that's one of the reasons that mobile technology has been pushed so hard. But actually, it's about the flexibility it offers. It's about the ability to have that lifestyle learning. It's about where younger people certainly expect to get information and expect to do some of their learning going forward. So that's the sort of strategy. Those are the elements I would really push quite hard.
Great. Well, that's right on time. So perfect timing, Andrew. And thank you so much for all of your insights. So I will be sending out to all of you who attended today the slides from this so that you can get that. And we will be following up. You do have information on Andrew's contact. You can also email us at info@gbsnonline.org if you'd like to get in contact with us. I hope you've had a very interesting hour, and hope to see you at the next GBSN webinar. Have a great day.